Hello, I'm Jolene. The message that I have for you guys today is about dropping the veil of illusion and remembrance of your essential nature or your innate nature, if that's what you want to call it. It is being, and the mind comes in and thinks that being is an action. Like, how do I be? And it's not an action, it's a cessation of action. So when you go into that quiet space where you can just feel, because as soon as the mind comes in, it tries to claim things and then it's lost from you. So the only way you can experience being is to quiet the mind and come into that place of being. And so what happens throughout our incarnation is we get programmed and conditioning that clouds that essential nature. And so once you start to wake up to your essential nature, it's really just an unraveling of all that conditioning and all the stuff that isn't you. So in shamanic traditions, they call this Maya, which is the illusion. Some people refer to it as the matrix. It is the belief that I am separate from life. So I am a separate individual as Jolene. I experience consciousness through the physical vessel of Jolene, but the truth of who I am is everything. So what I'd like to do is recite to you a passage from the Law of One. I don't know if you guys have read, this is a channel text that was done in the 80s. But it states that you are everything. You're every being, every emotion, every event, every situation. You are unity. You are infinity. And what I find is it's difficult for the human mind to grasp this because the mind operates on finite principles and what the being is infinite. So anything that the mind could come up in terms of a concept or a label will just pale in comparison to infinity because it's always going to be a finite structure. If you think about scooping up sand, that's life, the sand just falling through your fingers. And what the ego construct or the illusory self tries to do is build a sandcastle with all of its beliefs and its structures and ideas of what and who it is. And then the wave of infinity comes and washes the sandcastle away. And then it's like, oh, I got to build it back up again to have this structure, but it really is formless. So it's coming back to that, not having a construct for it and just being able to feel it. The more you can be in that feeling space, then all of that other stuff just drops away. And that's when you're able to really tap into your innate wellness. And it's not like this perfect thing. There is a peacefulness to it, but it's not like you're still going to have things that come up in your life and there's still going to be emotions. It's just there's not a separate person who's having the emotion, who's attaching to it. So it's more like life is flowing through you. You become a sieve for the universe versus somebody that's attaching to everything and trying to attach meaning to everything that's happening. Do you guys have any questions or any comments?
What language were you singing?
I sing in Spanish. They're called Icaros, so they're like medicine songs for the soul. And I specifically like to sing them in a different language than people, so that you're not trying to find meaning in the song versus feeling the meaning. So it helps to keep the mental cognition out of the way, because that's the thing about innate wellness, innate being. It's not something that you can know through mental cognition. It is only felt through resonance. So when I say these words to you and you feel something inside of you that resonates, that is what being is. And it's the same being in me that's in you. It's just that the one infinite creation has divided itself into multiple individuations, and we're all having an experience. It's like extensions of the source. And so our job, if you would call it that, is to engage in creation without attaching to it, because then we can maintain our infiniteness versus attaching to things and labeling what we think should be. Then we put the mental cognition's idea of what should be onto reality, and it limits infinite expression. Yeah.
Just a comment. You have a beautiful voice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and you'll find as you open up to your true nature, you won't even imagine the kinds of things that start to materialize in your experience, because we've been living such a constricted energy of who we truly are. And as that belief system falls away, the true you starts to emerge and you become an expression of the divine. And just for example, like with my singing, I always sang ever since I was like 3, but ever since I started to open up to the consciousness, it's dramatically changed. And every time I sing, I find that it opens up to new octaves and new notes that I couldn't sing before. So just to give you one example of how the unfolding of your true essence comes into being, just by relaxing. So it's not really an action, it's a relaxing of action. And this is the thing too, I've been really called to help people to understand is you don't have to do anything to be what you are. You already are. We've been sold that the whole thing of life is to become. It's not just the journey, it's what you become, but you truly cannot become anything that you aren't, what you already are. It is the constricted energy falling away that allows that to emerge into its full manifestation.
I was overhearing you talk to somebody earlier about just, well, I think it was my wife actually, that you were talking about, my wife was mentioning that her inability not to feel,
Right.
and she knows. And I really appreciate your comment that it's not so much her, it's a matter of her construct of her lively, her knowledge of what she's been enacted in her life, throughout her life, that has created those boundaries
Right.
for her not to feel. Right?
Yes.
And her full expression is just letting go of this construct, of this matrix, to be able to just be, right, and experience, right, and be that presence and be that full extension of yourself.
Right. And the emotional guidance system is one of the greatest gifts that we've pre-planned before we went into the forgetting phase. Because whenever we reincarnated, we forgot everything about who and what we are in order to have this experience. Because at the source, if you've ever experienced that deep sense of being, it's not positive or negative, it's very neutral. So the one wants to experience the highs and the lows. There's no experience that's invalid or not wanting to be had by the one infinite creator. And so we forget everything, and what we have to help us remember or to come back to that remembrance is our emotional guidance system. So whenever you have resonance, you know that you're in touch with your essence. And whenever you have any kind of negative emotion or resistance, you know that you've stepped away from it. So it's just a call to come back to being. Yeah.
Is there physical sensations that you know that are kind of telltale signs of where you're in resonance with yourself?
I feel it mostly like in the heart. I think everybody would probably have their own kind of experience because it's like the separate individuations all have their own experience of both returning to the source and their experience in the experience of creation. So for me, it's like a really deep heart resonance, and it's unshakable. It's like you don't even question it. It's just absolute. Yeah.
What's your background?
So I actually, like, before I even got into on my spiritual path, I was a safety coordinator for a construction company. And then I moved into like health and fitness. So I do personal training and nutrition coaching. And then I had a traumatic experience that put me into severe post-traumatic stress disorder. And it was that intense suffering that pushed me and propelled me onto the spiritual path. And it was just a gradation. And it's really interesting because when you talk to people that have come to the awakening process, or the ascension process, as they would call it, there's a very predictable way that it unfolds. So it's like first you realize that you're not the person who's thinking the thoughts, and then there's like the process of unattaching to it. So it's like you go through this thing where you're like, oh, I just want it to stop. Like, how come I can't get awoken? And I feel like that's where a lot of people are, is because you're not asleep. It's an illusion that you're asleep. So you don't actually awaken. You just come into remembrance that you're already awake. And then it's like, oh, and then you have all these realizations, and then it just becomes kind of a cosmic joke, if you will, your whole path to get to that place. If you want to even call it a place, it's more of just a falling away of everything that clouded you from your true essence.
Life experience too is a huge thing with experienced traumas of different levels. It can be anything. It can be, something that you're not even aware of. That is a trauma. That is these things that guide you on to that path to be able to awaken. In a way, awakening is just self-awareness, in my opinion, right? Of your space in your time, with your relationship with the here and now, and the people and the environment that you're in. So yeah, I think it's it's different for each individual on each level.
Right. And you find that when you're in that place of resonance and being, you don't have any problems. Everything's very peaceful. And then as soon as the veil comes back on and you come back into the illusion, then all of a sudden all your problems, all your traumas, all that just comes back into your energetic field. Yeah.
One could also argue that our separation from source is the original trauma.
Yeah.
And we just keep playing out different sort of like fractal,
Right.
mathematical patterns throughout our lifetime. Based on
Yeah, and it's interesting because in the law of one, they say you amuse yourself with this whole creation. Like whether you believe it or not, no matter what kind of experience you're having, it could be completely catastrophic, and on a level you actually wanted to have that experience. Because there's such richness that comes from it, and like the whole thing with forgetting, it's like, think about like this, like you give $100 bill to a millionaire on the street and they're like, oh, what's this? Like, it's kind of just whatever. But if you were to give it to somebody who's been through a lot of struggle and really had a hard life, it's like this energetic burst of love and appreciation. So that's kind of the why I think that we choose to experience the things we do. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to go over on my time, so it was a pleasure to speak with you guys and pray for you today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Do you want me to leave this on for you, or you'll put it back on? No?
yes, I just get stoked now. Yes.
In? Yeah. Okay.